Welcome to another edition of Cattle Call. I'm Susan Littlefield on the Rural Radio Network. Well, we did get some cash developing, and surprise, surprise, it didn't happen out of the South like it usually does. We'll talk about that, where it sets, and what does that mean for our basis. And of course, have we turned the tide and put things back in the Packers' pocket when it comes to the availability of pushing these cattle? We've got a lot that we'll look at, and as you notice, that's not Brad Kooima. Brad is actually spending some time in the grain cart, actually sharing with us a photo of him working hard. Joe Kooima is joining us to fill in today. Joe, I appreciate you stepping in to Brad's shoes to do this program and to see some cash develop initially that didn't come out of the South is not something we've had to deal with a lot lately.
Right. Great question to start off. And thanks for letting me fill in here for Brad as he plays farmer today. But yeah, we have this tremendous rally that we've seen here basically the last 3 weeks. I think some of these deferreds have had 21 out of 23 days higher with a small correction. I think April finally, after 17 trading sessions, actually had a break here today, which was very well needed. Usually you want a market that's perhaps a little bit more healthy where it can rally $5-6, take a break, take a step back, and kind of keep going. But this one's definitely one for the highlight reel to have happen. But yes, we did see some cash leak out here about an hour and a half ago. It is steady with last week. So this is the third week up here in the north that we're at this 187 caliber, which it seems fine. We're holding cash together. However, we've just witnessed the basis disappear. The October board is at 188 and we got cash at 187. Usually we're sitting here, $2-3 better in the last few weeks in that situation. But this is definitely a little bit of some flashing lights could possibly be going off right now, especially with the tremendous rally that we've seen. This overbought status is usually kind of what I like to see as far as what I'm going to hedge into. But the plus side of this overbought status is that we've stayed here for well into 2 weeks now. So we're getting better prices than what we initially had when we were first overbought there about $5 ago.
So you talk about the basis being lost. Does that give some advantage to those Packers out there when they're looking for cattle?
Yep, you always hear Brad say that the leverage is a fine line, and it doesn't take much to flip flop it in either direction. So this would be one card for the Packers to have now, is that the basis isn't favorable by any means, but we need cattle to be probably gone. We're going to stay current, but with the cheaper corn out there, and now you got a futures market that's a little bit better than this week's cash. Feeder prices are pretty high. This kind of gives the light to make these cattle even bigger than what they are right now. So that's another warning sign or kind of a flashing light that we'll have to pay attention to here moving forward yet.
How big are the cattle, Joe, at this point in the South? Because I just keep hearing they're adding the poundage because for them, the grain is cheap.
Grain dropping this summer has been advantageous for that. We've had a tremendous year just growing these cattle all together. A little heat spell here and there during the summer, but nothing major. These nights stay very temperamental for the temperature. So it just makes sense. And some of it's not making sense that we're going to feed it to a higher price. It's just more that our tracking numbers were a lot higher when we get to that point we're ready to sell them and buy 50, 80 pounds. It's a big number.
Is this going to be the new trend that we're just going to continue to see heavy and heavier cattle? Obviously more to the south than in the north, but it seems to be continually happening week after week.
Right. Unless we're not too far away from probably having some weather events up here in the north, maybe in the panhandles in the south. But yeah, we're still 4 or 6 weeks away from something like that. So that would be the disruption that we would need to have happen. Because once cattle usually go off feed in a situation like that, they tend to stay off. But for right now, there's really nothing to break the pattern of having these cattle gain of what they are gaining.
But We got to look at the opposite side of this picture. We've had a great rally, Joe, in these markets up until what we saw in a Wednesday trade.
Right. It's been a tremendous feat. We have the right players in this marketplace too. We saw the open interest climb here the last 2 weeks. So that is the managed money or the funds just really stepping to it here pretty good. They're not afraid to buy, into new contract highs by any means. So that's been the positive feature, and that's why we had a market stay as overbought as what we have been, because any small little break, they were pretty hungry just to add more length to their portfolio. So we have good company up here. I'm not saying, some of these warning signs that I'm putting out there, I don't know if it has to be exactly bearish, today or by this week, Friday or anything like that. It's just a few things are starting to kind of align that we just got to make sure we have good measures. We got June board back above 181, 182. I think that's a big price if a guy is uncertain about what his Feb and April cattle might be. Maybe a guy just uses that June just as a little bit of a leverage point there for a hedge.
But we also have the Goldman Roll that's going to be taking place this week as well, correct?
Yep, I think we're starting to venture into that here a little bit. So you might see some added pressure on December. The funds are long, so they'll be selling out of December, maybe buying some back months there just a little bit. So that's something to keep an eye on as well.
I have to ask, is there the opportunity, because harvest is going as fast as it is, that some of these cattle feedlots could pick up some grain a little bit cheaper because there's not a place to store it?
Right. We've got advantageous weather here that we don't have a cloud in the sky at all. So we are going to be hit with a lot of grains coming to town. And it doesn't make a whole lot of sense necessarily to store it right now when you look at the interest rates and whatnot. So this would be a pretty good ticket here to start pricing some stuff out of the field and make sure that we have that checkbox marked out, that we can at least know what our cost of gains are going to be moving forward.
Well, Joe, we appreciate you filling in for Brad this week. What's the best way for folks to get a hold of you guys in the office?
They can give us a call here, 1-800-358-3047. Also got a website you guys can play around on, kkvtrading.com.
All right, that has been this week's Cattle Call. A quick reminder, commodity futures and options do involve a substantial risk of loss, not suitable to all investors. And that's this week's Cattle Call on the Rural Radio Network.